Today, we are very fortunate to have an entrepreneur on our show. The Henry Harrison podcast, Entrepreneurs and Finance, has Jack Carrere, founder and owner of Prokeep. And we'll explain more about that, but he's launching a new product, and we're very glad to have him here. Welcome to the show, and hello, Jack.
Hello, thanks for having me, Henry.
Yeah, so let's start where you are right now. You've got a sizable organization. We did a little discussion before, and I looked you up. Over 100 employees, contractors. You can go in with some of the huge number of distributors, and you've been doing this almost 10 years, and you're launching a new product. So let's maybe start telling us about your organization and what you're doing now that you weren't doing before.
Yeah, so like you said, we launched Prokeep a little over 10 years ago, which seems crazy to say out loud, but it's been an evolution. So we have just over 100 employees, spread out across a couple different hubs. Our headquarters here is here in New Orleans. We also have a hub in Portland, Oregon, and then a whole bunch of remote Prokeepers, we like to call them. We serve just over 1,000 distributors with our solution and have over 40,000 active users that interface with over 3 million contractors. And what they're doing on our platform is, distributors, if you've ever walked into one, there's a couple aisles of retail, but then there's a counter or inside sales crew. And we help them, organize their day. They're getting hit by, orders coming over a myriad of different channels. It might be email, might be a text message, believe it or not, still fax, and we unify that into a central inbox to make their workflow a little bit easier, but also help them miss fewer orders coming to their counter. And then we also help them be more proactive. So if you think about someone that's one of our core users, they're being asked a lot for recommendations on products or how do you service this water heater that might be broken or this piece of HVAC equipment that might be broken, and they're really good at that. But there's also opportunity for them to go outbound and push a message that might be important for the brand or for the distributor, and we make that a little bit easier. So the new product is really harnessing the opportunity for these counter people to be more proactive, be more efficient, and we're dubbing it our order engine. So we launched that about a couple weeks ago, not too far away from you if you're in Dallas and in Austin, Texas, and have gotten a really good response from the market, so far. So happy to chat more on that, if you're curious.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us a little bit about the response from the market because this is a launch of what, a couple months ago or
Yeah, no,
yes,
it's
yesterday
totally
morning.
fresh. It was, we launched it a couple weeks ago, and the real innovation here is taking all these disparate things that are happening, like at the counter with our users, because if you think about it, like there's like a lot of technology that we take for granted in our day to day. For instance, like at ProKeep, we use a CRM. Like we also have marketing tools that help us understand prospects, customers, where they are in their buying journey that are very helpful and very sophisticated. But when you walk into a distributor environment, it's not ideal, right? It's not the ideal place for technology and workflows that you have in HubSpot or Salesforce or maybe a phone system don't translate as well to the distributor environment. So what we've done is we've taken a lot of these things we've learned, things that are specific to our distributor customers, and built that into our platform, keeping it simple because our customers they're busy. Like they're taking a call, they're checking something in the warehouse, trying to find a new product that an OEM is launching that a customer needs because one of their residential customers has seen an advertisement, and we want to be the easy button for them to bring all those different disparate workflows together. And that's what we've accomplished with Order Engine. It's been a journey, and obviously, like, we didn't start there. We've been at this for a number of years and gone through a number of different iterations and how we help. But it's really exciting to start to see our vision come together and be the front of house system for our customers.
Yeah, talk about some of the changes or challenges. I know that it's usually not a straight path in my experience. Most of the entrepreneurs have COVID is a natural one. We certainly heard a lot of, but there had to be some points where it's like, I mean, one friend that was on, he had one of the larger accounting firms where you can outsource accounting in Dallas, Fort Worth. And he said the running joke was when Chris almost ran the company out of cash. So, he made fun of himself and they made fun of him for years. Of course, he's very successful and it all worked out. But at the time, hey, so what are some challenges you've had to overcome?
So, we I won't go like too far down this path, but we were still our customer Silicon Valley Bank. So that was a interesting time when that bank went belly up and, we
Gosh,
had to act quickly to, figure it all out. But that all worked itself out, obviously. You mentioned COVID. That was a really interesting time. We're a much younger company at that moment. I think we had about 20 or so employees and, serving a fraction of the number of customers we have today. But it was a really interesting time because if you remember, stores were closing, walk-ins were not happening, restaurants were shutting down, and a lot of our customers, had the same effect. They were forced to shut down, their showroom, shut down their counter. Customers, contractors could no longer walk into the building, but home services and construction in general, was an industry that had to persevere, continue forward. It's not, they couldn't, none of our customers and none of their customers could, just like work from home because you have to be out in the field. An HVAC system's going to break. You have to have someone there to go fix it. Otherwise, it's going to be a hot summer in Dallas. So that moment actually spurred a lot of opportunity for us because as a platform that facilitates communication between our customers, the counter, and contractors, we could be the relief valve. Not all like, contractors could call in and, if you did that, then, the wait time might have been 20, 30 minutes. We offered our customers a way for, letting a contractor like text in to the branch, for instance, where they do business, and you can answer 5 or 6 text messages at a time versus you can only have one phone call at a time. So we were, in a lot of cases, a relief valve for our customer segment in that moment. At the same time, like, all of us pro keepers were going remote and like having to learn how to obviously do business in a different way. But, there's those moments as an entrepreneur, you have to think on your feet and, sometimes the pathway isn't what you had planned for, but you figure it out. And, we were fortunate to, at that moment, have, people calling us and, needing help. And that's kind of why you're in it, is to help other people and give them something that hopefully makes their day a little easier. So that was rewarding time, but super stressful.
yeah, yeah. What's your competition?
It's a
Phone people on the phone. I mean, there's just practical. There's a guy on the show. He has this technology where it helps people manage large labor workforces.
Mhm.
Basically, a computer that keeps time, but on its own and connects with accounting. He says my biggest competition is the notepad, the guy there checking everyone in and out.
So there's for us it's sticky notes.
Sticky notes.
Where
I
you see
thought that
like
was
you
going to be.
walk you walk into one of our and there's sticky notes everywhere on the computer, like, but in all seriousness, I think it's all the disparate like ways you communicate with people, like, phone, email, personal devices if you're texting, sticky notes. And those are very effective, like, in their own way. The innovation we're bringing is like bringing those disparate kind of scattered things into a single pane of glass or a unified inbox. And doing that, there's some efficiency obviously, because if like, the whole 3 or 4 people, which is a typical counter, like are servicing a customer base, you can, push workflow to the person that has some availability versus like just slamming one person at the counter who's, typically the most tenured person, they have the most expertise. So this allows, younger people in the workforce to like learn and, help the company. Another thing that you gain with bringing things to one spot is the ability to build the collective intelligence of the organization. We use that term a lot. So taking what's in a lot of salespeople's heads, and now you have, a system of record that you can use to optimize a marketing campaign, like select the right audience based on brand preferences based on frequency of communication, which are all data points that we see come through Prokeep. And then the last thing I'll offer is with this new launch of Order Engine, we've started to interact with our customers' backend system, which is commonly known as the ERP. So as an order comes in through one of our channels, the system automatically matches that to what the product availability is, producing a quote so that our customers aren't having to rekey in something in another system. It can all happen in one place, which is a better experience as a customer, as you can imagine. But also, our customers win when they're the first to quote and like get back to a contractor needing something out in the field. So if we can help them go a little faster and get to a customer more quickly, then they often win the opportunity to win the order.
You also probably have a target size, or maybe is it all the way from one employee to thousands of employees? Is there a target size, or because there's got to be time to invest to adopt, which I'm sure is a major consideration when people want to go with your platform?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. So, I think it also like is relevant in like, when you think about the entrepreneurial journey, when you start, you'll work with anybody, right? Like if you have the opportunity to, we did like one of our first customers was Flick Distribution in Harahan, Louisiana. They had two locations spread out across, the New Orleans metropolitan area. And that was great because I could go visit every day, sit there and like, drink the stale coffee and bring some donuts and like learn and understand and we could move faster in developing product. But working with these smaller organizations, and if you have a solution that is adding value to the marketplace, you start to get calls from larger organizations. So we're fortunate also to be working with some of the biggest distributors now in building materials. So like Ferguson is one of our customers, ABC Supply, Pool Corp is another one in the pool supply space. And, you know, working with a larger organization is very different than working with a smaller organization. And we've had to, evolve the product and our processes for implementing for these larger organizations, like as we've started to work with them. So it's a good call out. Fortunately, our product scales, nicely, like whether you have 1,000 different locations within your footprint or just one or two. And we play friendly with both sizes and everything
That's
in the
really
middle.
that's very helpful. Yeah. Well, you to use a word that you used a few times, Brown. You went to Brown College, University. Yeah,
Guilty as charged.
Brown and engineering seem disparate to me, but my knowledge might be outdated. I remember my brother went to Dartmouth. I went to Emory University, but his good friend went to Brown, and it was all liberal arts focused. And then I saw engineering focus on math. So was that something you always thought you'd want to do? And you went to Brown, or you got to Brown and said, "Well, I'll try this."
So Brown was the best school I got into. So that that
It's a pretty
that,
good
that helped.
school.
The it was also, I have a lot of family up in the Northeast, so it was nice kind of to, try something new. But surprisingly, Brown, its largest major collectively is its engineering majors, which no one would ever know because of its reputation. But, personally, I've always been a math and science person and like the opportunity to understand how things work and the logic behind that. I did mechanical engineering, so thinking through, motors, like car design, the hook that like drove my interest. And then, immediately like after college, I chose a career in, business consulting and and working with, companies. And one of my first clients was BNSF, like I think in your neck of the woods, helping, design more efficient routes for cargo coming from Long Beach, LA, like, across the nation. So it's a good, I think, framework for breaking bigger problems into smaller chunks and, working through them with a team. So I love my engineering background and, but I don't understand calculus anymore, which is like one of those things that like is so important in that like moment in your life, and then you kind of lose it.
Well, now I expect you deal with a lot of your developers, and so there's a overlap, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
Engineering development. I mean, especially when you're developing things for companies that have distribute things with engineering. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a good call out. Like just the like, as an engineer, part of the curriculum is doing computer science courses so you understand like how to think through CS problems and build, which has been helpful on the product and engineering side. Like I feel like I know a little bit to be dangerous in those conversations. But one of the things I love about like working in, building materials and distribution is like these are physical assets being moved, and we're helping drive those things forward with our software. But at the end of the day, the result of what we do is helping our customers and help them in turn helping their customers build a house, or build a commercial building, or replace someone's HVAC unit who in the middle of summer in Dallas. Like that's a critical thing to keep people comfortable. Or that's really rewarding. Not being from the industry. My family doesn't have a background in distribution or like contractor, but it's real people doing real stuff, and it's really rewarding to help move that forward a little bit better.
Yeah, my first business was a custom home building company for 10 years. So, boy, it's important that the distributors have your back and get you the
Yeah.
stuff that you needed and communicate well, and any systems that they could have. I would think it helped that any buyer would be, it would help their business and their customers. Well, these days, if anything like you're doing, software and improvements, you got to say, how's the weather and how's AI? So, how's AI affecting you?
It's an amazing accelerant to, a lot of the things we're building in our products. I mean, there's two sides of this. Like, how do you empower like your employees, your teams to use the technology to move a little faster, improve outcomes ultimately for our customers? But, within our product, it's something that is so critical to our future success. Like a couple of examples, for instance, in our platform, we have over 80 million messages that have been, moved between our customers and their customers. So we have a lot of data points, a lot of understanding about like the market and what's important to people, what's not important to people, and how to effectively drive like a message that then gets better response rates from contractors. So a silly example is you might have like a piece of HVAC equipment. The HVAC manufacturer wants to do a 10% off day. Let's say it's Tuesday and this is Wednesday. What we can do because of the breadth of our platform is we can suggest to our customer, the distributor, an audience that like would be receptive to this message, and then also particular time of day, or like some messaging around how to deliver that message to optimize the response rate, the take rate for that promotion. That's incredibly powerful to not only like suggest that to a customer as like this is something you should do, but also give them the pathway, the template for this is how you do it, because they're busy, they're running around, they've got 10 other things going on, but this could be the most important thing, but they just don't know how to do it, or they just need a little help. So we're really excited about how AI is, and it's so good now. I guess, a year ago, if we were talking, the foundational models, which everything's built off of, like we're fine, but now they're getting more sophisticated, and they're going to continue to, which is going to be really fun to ride that wave.
So in business school, they had something where I went, an entrepreneurial institute here in Dallas at SMU. I went at night, and they talked about entrepreneurs have a precipitating event, or they have a lifelong passion, or they fall into something. Some people get fired, some people quit because they're burnt out, other people always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So when you started your business, how did that happen? Because that's a big change, a big
Yeah, I think there's
mission.
like, yeah, I mean, so I did the consulting thing. I was up in Boston at the time, and then I joined a startup, up there as well. That was just when I fell in love with like the journey. Like I was, working with a number of successful serial entrepreneurs, like doing their next thing. And, I got be a part of the team that, helped them raise some money, launch new products, and mentors I still like call on to this day, like, at that first event. So that's where I, kind of fell in love with the whole process. Eventually moved back home to New Orleans because, Dallas is a booming place. New Orleans is a great place to live if you're a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant. So, one of my North Stars is creating an opportunity for those that weren't going down that path that might want to be in technology, but also want to live in New Orleans and do it here. So that's been one of my North Stars is the ability to create an opportunity, create potential for those that, wanted to be here in New Orleans specifically. But, we have our Portland, Oregon, which is another place I spent some time. So that's powerful. But like, if you ask me what was the moment that like I just had to jump at this opportunity. It's when my wife and I were settling down, we're buying a house, and old houses in New Orleans need contractors to come by to fix stuff. Great technicians, great at awesome at fixing the thing that you call them to come fix. Really needed some help like managing their business and like their workflow. So being an engineer and like wanting to solve problems, I jumped at that opportunity to help contractors better manage their day. And that ultimately wasn't the thing that has become ProKeep, but it was my entrance into construction, building material, and we eventually like moved up the supply chain and built a product for distributors. But if you 2015 to 2018 was a whole bunch of pivots and like bad ideas, and like it was like not sexy, but you have to put in the work and you learn. And one of my mentors used to say like you survive as long as you can. And eventually the hard work will pay off. So we're at a much different scale now, having raised over $37 million in venture capital to help us build products for our customer base and become the front of house for distributors, but it doesn't start off that way.
Do well, and you're also given, I was going to say, you find time or you have in the past to be board members and affiliated, associated with different angel networks, different accelerators. So your passion for helping people in business. I also have a soft spot for being a home builder, for the contractors and people that are really good at what they do and, are struggling to answer the phone and work and check text and invoice. And so anything like that would help. But you've been into accelerators, you've been into all kinds of other types of angel networks. That's a passion for you. That's something that you feel like you help people with, you learn from. I learn when I do this.
Yeah.
Um, is
Yeah,
that an ongoing thing
it
for you?
yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, lifelong learner, just I'm just generally curious. And you can learn a lot by being around other smart, motivated, like curious people. And you think about angel networks. I launched one here in New Orleans. It aligned with like, my passion for New Orleans and wanting to create be on the leading edge of building a capital community here to fund great ideas, but also, meet like experienced entrepreneurs who like, have done some really cool stuff and built some special businesses. And, that was part of it. But, also I was just like, I was dying to like, find an idea myself. And that's a great place to like, hang out and, meet entrepreneurs who are like, in the early stages of their journey, and seeing if there's an opportunity to collaborate. And ultimately my path led me to start my own thing. But there could have been a moment, who knows, like early on there, that could have teamed up with an entrepreneur that we had a good chemistry and believed in the concept. So it's a little bit, same reason consulting is a good kind of place to be if you like solving problems. So not a great answer, but I think
That's a good
it
answer.
made sense for me.
Did you think you'd be an entrepreneur or business owner when you were a kid? Were you the shy guy at home studying, or were you out there with lemonade stands, or somewhere in between? Or
Yeah, I mean, I had some odd jobs. The moment when I could like go work and make money, I chose that path. And as camp counselor to working a summer job in construction, working on a ranch, working in a machine shop. So I pushed myself to put myself in uncomfortable situations so that I could learn. And, I also have memories of I think a lot of people do like going to the office, in this case with my dad, and on Saturdays and Sundays. And, that was, I probably didn't know it at the time, but like it probably instilled some work ethic, if he's doing that on the weekend. So, yeah, I did a couple lemonade stands that were marginally successful. I don't think you have to blow it out of the park with a lemonade stand to, be an entrepreneur, but I'm sure it didn't hurt.
Oh,
We should have charged more for our lemonade. Like we did enough to help us buy a video game like at the end of the day. But like hearing what kids are charging now for one of my colleagues, he did a lemonade stand with his son last weekend. They're charging $5 a pop for lemonade. He made
oh,
200
yeah,
bucks in an hour. I was like, that I should have done that.
that's crazy. Well, let's talk about the future. So tell me how 37 million venture capital, who is the company? When did you decide to go that route? And what's that going to enable you to do, or is this already enabling you to do, I expect, with this new product?
Yep.
It's going to further help your company, your distributors, the world at large. And I think I heard you say you want to be the front-facing platform for distributors across the country.
Yeah. So couple funding partners across two different rounds. The first number of years we bootstrap. So, really, focused on, product innovation within our customer segment and listening to them, evolving with their needs and building around that. And then, in 2022 and then later in 2024, we really saw the opportunity to double down on this vision to be the front of house system for distributors. And in order to do that, we need to invest more heavily into product and engineering, build the products so that we can come behind it and put it into our go-to-market motion. So a lot of the results of these two investment rounds really is culminated in this event, that launching Order Engine, because until this point there hasn't been a way to harness, your counter or inside sales team, because they're more reactive. Like they're taking orders, they're getting inbound calls, and when you're reactive, it's really hard to change gears and start being proactive. That's a different mindset, farmer versus hunter. But the way we've approached it is, the way we help our customers and their salespeople be proactive is by not changing their process or their behavior, more asking them to be reactive in the platform. And that reactive thing is asking them to be proactive. Send a message to this person, letting them know that you're here. Like here's suggested message, and just saying, hey, is there anything you need today? And when you have that touch and you're a contractor out in the field, like, oh yeah, I know Jimmy, haven't talked to him a bit. Like I'm on this project right now. Like let me just throw in that order. Like he reached out. And so that's, the ethos of it. But when you're able, a lot of our customers, they've invested a lot in their counter and inside sales team. It's a big portion of their sales force. So if you're able to move the needle a little bit, and obviously you have to help them get time back in the day, which we do with our unified inbox. But if you can also activate them and help get one or two more orders a week, on the backs of these really capable inside and outside salespeople, then that's a needle mover for our customers. And in a moment when there's a lot of uncertainty around tariffs and supply chains, and what is this going to mean for my business? One thing you can lean on is the relationships our customers have with their customers. And when you can activate that in a way that isn't naggy or annoying, and you have to deliver the right message at the right time, it's been a powerful signal to the market. And I think one of the reasons why we started to see a lot of success with the launch of Order Engine.
So 37 million in venture funding. Did you celebrate? You're in New Orleans. I mean, I was going to say, would you have a steak dinner, but did you have a crawfish boil, or did you all get around and say, "Hey, this is great," and put out press releases? Well, what's the name of the? Was it public? What's the name of the companies that are backing you?
Yeah, so there's a couple. Our seed round was led by Iron Spring Ventures. They're out of Austin, Texas. And then, the other large participation in that check was S3 Ventures, which is also out of Austin, Texas. And they've been great partners to us. Most recently, the Series A was led by Dahlia Equity out of San Francisco. And yeah, there's a moment where you high five and you celebrate. It's a validation point for the business and the strength of
Sure,
the
sure,
business
yeah.
and the vision. But at the end
And
of
then
the day,
then you
like
realize the pressure's on.
there's a moment where like you have to like start to learn how to operate with new people, new investors, and that generally like works itself out after a couple months. But at the end of the day, we're in this because of our customers and we want to serve them. And I love my investors, but I get more excited when we sign a new logo, a new customer, or we're on the phone with a customer that we've had for 5 years, and like we see a mutual opportunity to work on the proactive side of the business, for instance, and help them with that, because those are the people that keep us in business, and we're gonna continue to serve.
Well,
And
of course, that's the plan, right? You have more capital so you can invest essentially in your customers by getting your company in a situation where you have more products to help your customers more. So even from the investor standpoint, it's still all about the customers. That's why they invested with you, because they want you to grow the customers and help the customers more.
that's
So
right. That's right. I
yeah,
don't think any would be upset about that.
yeah, no, 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 no. Well, so what was it? A crawfish boil or a steak dinner? You didn't answer that.
Probably a little bit of
Maybe
both.
sparkling water. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
little bit of both. I mean, I remember like for the seed round, for instance, it was during Mardi Gras, which is
Oh,
a big
yeah,
time of year down here.
yeah.
And I was signing like the final docs on my phone. And I couldn't get cell phone coverage. So I had to, run home to get coverage to
For Mardi
which
Gras.
yeah,
I
but
rode on a float. Harry Connick Jr. float
yeah.
started out. What's that called?
I think that's Orpheus, if I remember
Orpheus.
correctly.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's Orpheus. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was crazy.
It's it's a great organization. They ride on Monday, but that's a lot of fun. Glad you feel like a rock star up there. It's a good
Yeah,
time.
it's crazy, crazy. Well, you got a lot of good things ahead, so we'll stay in touch and keep watching. And I don't know if there's something you want to wrap up on, or other than that's a good story. Signing during Mardi Gras a contract for funding when you can't get cell coverage.
No, this has been a lot of fun, easy conversation. I think like bringing it back to like the why, and to encourage like those out there that are building businesses and like creating opportunity. I always like it wasn't like like where we started, but if you can find an industry where there is a gap with like how technology is perceived or used, like in our case home services or distribution, you can have an outsized impact on those industries. So keep on looking for those opportunities, and it's not always like the first thing you try, but could be the third or fourth, or in our case like the 20th. But hopefully you you strike gold faster.
Well done on continuous learning and growing your company, helping your customers, and great to chat. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Harry.
Okay.